Hello, welcome to Soulprint Intuitive Tarot. This is for April 4th. So, we now have Defendant. Now, this is, I'm going to just do a straight channeling, okay? I don't still have a lot of energy. Before I start, thank you so much for all of the good well wishes and the energy and the Reiki that's being sent my way, the light, the love. I'm so grateful for it all. This is really difficult. I've somehow really annoyed a couple of major muscle groups in sort of my hip and back. I have a tendon that is so tight right now, it feels like a bone. I'm still really in a kind of trying to, get this thing to settle down and getting a lot of rest, but it is a little frustrating. So I'm just going to get on with this. So, Spirit, please tell us what we need to know on this day. All right, so the first thing you need to know is that any anxiety that was spent worrying about rioting and a repeat of January 6th was kind of a waste of energy. So one of the things that you can deduct that we can take from all of this is that our positive intentions, our positive thoughts, our sort of redirecting our attention to something that is, hopeful and light-filled, apparently worked. Because there weren't those riots, there weren't big crowds, no one was trying to, bust down the doors and break the windows. So that's a couple of things. One, that does talk to some degree about Trump's kind of waning power. Um, the that group of people that protect him have gotten to a place where they're so paranoid that now they won't show up to protest because they think it's some sort of a government hoax or, a trap. So understanding that those are what's left of his base, sort of the ones that are really deep-seated into the delusion and ones that have their own agenda, but they're piggybacking on him because he, as we know, is really good at sucking up all the oxygen in a room, okay? So that's fine. Now, he is Defendant Trump, okay? 34 felony charges. So a couple of things. As it stands now, this thing is going to go through the court system, okay? But we heard today that the next hearing is not until December 4th, all right? So this was a lot of build up and anxiety and stress. And now we're going into sort of a dormant period when it comes to what we get to hear about the 34, criminal indictments. So this is another one of those times where you just have to breathe deep and say that, the justice moves slow. And that's what you're witnessing. But don't lose heart, because next week starts the Trump has to be, I think it's in New York, because he has to be deposed with regards to the E. Jean Carroll assault and defamation suit. And then I think it's the week after that, the trial starts for the defamation suit between Dominion and Fox. So there's lots going to be going on, and everything. Hillary Clinton used to say, and Nancy Pelosi used to say, all Russian roads lead to Trump. I think now it's safe to say that all indictments are going to lead to Trump. But all of these things still swirl around him, right? The first one with Carol is it's a really serious charge, right? Um, I hesitate to actually call it a rape charge only because I don't know the correct terminology and I don't really want to be speaking out of turn when it comes to that kind of a charge, okay? Um, and then, of course, the Fox News thing, well, that was all to support Trump, and that's what's going to come out. And unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of talk about how stupid the people at Fox thought he was and his, surrogate there. So, Powell, right? Okay, so that's what's going on there. So, there's still going to be a lot to pay attention to, etc. From what I understand, it is October that the Tish James, those cases are going to be able to move ahead. So, there's a lot going on in that sphere, in that arena. And this is the thing that you need to remember is that he is someone who has always gotten away with whatever he wanted to get away from. And all of a sudden, he is walking face first into situations where he doesn't have the power and he can't bamboozle people and he can't, send his hit guys after him. He's powerless. He has exactly the same power as every other citizen, and that's not a place where he is used to being. So you can continue to expect these sort of irrational posts that he's posting, kind of that deterioration. I took very, very close look at him when I was watching the coverage earlier, and the pictures of him with that very, very straight face. Now, understand, Trump in his years has become a consummate performer, okay? So if he thought it was in his best interest to smile, he would smile. If he thought it was in his best interest to look somber and reserved, he will do that. But it was the pictures that were taken inside the courtroom while he was aware of the fact that there were cameras or a camera, he was not so much in his head because what he was hearing was sobering to him. So I'm going to take a quick dive into Trump's energy, into his psyche, and just see how he's doing. As I am recording this at like 4:00 Mountain Time, so I think he's probably close to landing back in Florida. But that's where he's gone to. So show me Trump. So the judge sort of was reminding lawyers to kind of keep their clients and their witnesses under control. He does not want to hear a lot of rhetoric, et cetera, which, of course, tonight at 8:00 Florida time, apparently Trump has a big speech to make. I sincerely hope all the networks just don't cover it ad nauseum. I'm really tired of watching the OJ, helicopter flying overheads following, cars. Nobody needs to actually follow it, okay? Like, they just don't. He, again, is absorbing all of the energy. However, so where he is right now, he's actually now quite somber. He has actually started to register fear. So this is the thing. Prior to today, what we called fear was really incredible heightened anxiety. Where he's at now is actual fear because there are now charges. He is now a defendant. That is not kind of, I guess, the role that he likes to envision himself as. So he is very somber right now. He is, in his own way, he's actually trying to process this. And I have to tell you, in some ways, he's incredibly confused because he feels like everybody does this. And so why is he being singled out? So there's like a disconnect between what he thinks should happen and how he feels he should be treated versus the actual reality of it. And because he's really gone through, that whole 70 plus years without actually ever having to be responsible for some of the choices and decisions he's made, he's finding himself in that kind of position. And he's finding himself in that position sort of with district attorneys where he doesn't have any clout or power, right? He doesn't have Bill Barr running around saying, oh no, stop doing that. We don't investigate that. Leave that be. That's not what's happening. And so he's just starting to get an inkling of how serious this situation is. And that's giving him some clarity on how much more serious the ones that follow are, because they're sort of bigger deals, right? I mean, this was the smallest, if you will, of the cases that are coming at him. So there is definitely, now, make no mistake, what is bubbling under that is flat rage, absolute rage. It's not anger. It's not upset. It is rage that someone, anyone, dares to question the way he conducts his business or himself or his presidency or his classified documents. He is just at that place where he is in a state of rage. When I looked at the pictures of him inside the courtroom, you could just see almost like red static energy just emitting from him. So he is like working really hard. Honestly, I would not have liked to have been on that plane going home. I would not want to be anywhere near Mar-a-Lago, because he is like a ticking time bomb. And the thing is, I expect that he's going to go off several times. He's not going to stay quiet, because the more aggravated he becomes, the more volatile he becomes. So that's how he's doing right now. That's what's going on with him. His lawyers are just trying so hard to appease him and keep him calm. And that's not going to work, I guess. I mean, sorry to disappoint them for their really big try of doing this, but it just feels like it's not going to help. They really don't have any control over him. And so he is going to do and say whatever he wants. So tonight there is this sort of press conference that he is having. I suppose that there may be a few more protesters, but the reality is, I mean, at one point there was 4 of them gathered to protest. And I don't know if this was this morning or at some point over the weekend, but he's not drawing those big crowds, okay? But so expect that to be full of rhetoric and anger and save the country. And oh, by the way, send me every last cent you have. So that's what you can expect there. It's another grip. But internally, like I say, there's a lot of rage. He's incredulous. I mean, that's a word for it. He's absolutely incredulous that anybody would dare to question him. And because when he was the king hoo-ha of Trump Corp, nobody did, he's discovered that people do question him. And he's discovering that who's questioning him now are not pesky reporters, but lawyers and judges. And it's got him in a state really of being quite unbalanced. So what can you tell me, Spirit, just about going forward with him, what we can anticipate in the days and weeks and even months to come? So you can finally expect something coming out of the DA's office in Fulton, Georgia. It feels as if that's coming out. I'm kind of looking at somewhere around the 21st. I don't even know what day that is, but somewhere kind of bracketing that date. It feels like that is when we're going to hear what is being charged or not being charged out of Fulton County. And that, of course, is a very serious one. And so he is just going to continue to get ramped up and ramped up. The deposition for E.G. Carroll, you can anticipate a lot of, I'm taking the fifth, and I don't remember when he doesn't take the fifth. So the problem with that is that while he thinks it's a very clever tactic, it may very well not reflect well for him in court. Because I think that may well be one of those situations where all of his no comments can be literally viewed as a negative response by the jury, I think. So there's going to be that. The defamation suit, that's going to take a little bit, they've got to get their juries and et cetera, on and on. But it definitely feels like that one is actually going to keep sort of the lie of that election of 2020, growing, not growing, that's not what I mean. I mean, it's going to become more and more exposed. And so that's going to be interesting because there are lots of people who, if it's not on Fox, they don't get their news. But every once in a while, really big things tend to penetrate that fog, just like the January 6th hearings did, right? So it feels like the defamation case is not going to go well just reflectively on the Donald, because it's going to really show a lot of kind of ill intentions, right? It's going to show that, he knew, but he wanted to perpetuate the lie. So that's going on. So there's going to be activity, a lot of sort of legal type activity around him for the next good long while. In some ways, this is the beginning of the 1,000 cuts. Okay? Because beforehand, all we had was a lot of bad behaviors, right? We weren't in a place where we were seeing any significant movement towards holding him accountable. And that is something that we're now going to see going forward. So today, that arraignment today, that made him a defendant of 34, no less, felony charges, is the beginning kind of the end for him. It just feels like he is not going to weather this very well. He's not going to be able to rein in his anger or his frustration. He's not going to stop lashing out. And so, as we know he does, he's just going to continue to keep his foot, in the mud, right? I mean, so expect a lot of theatrics and rhetoric from him, but honestly, it's just noise, okay? Just let it be noise. That's all it is, because he doesn't have any other option. Interesting. The other thing they're saying is that over the next few months, you may see a slight shift in the way media covers him. It is so not necessary to show a split screen so reminiscent of the OJ Bronco chase. Okay, it's just not. Nobody needs to follow him from Trump Tower all the way to the airport. Nobody needs to follow him from Mar-a-Lago all the way to the airport. We don't need to see the arrivals and the departures. Okay, if you want to show like 30 seconds of each, that's great. But I think people are going to start speaking out about, the media screams nonstop about how Trump takes up all the oxygen, but they continue to watch him and focus on him. Now, in part, to be fair, that's where they get their ratings from. Okay, that's what people are super interested in. But they're going to have to do better in terms of not following him so intently that that's all the news consumers of news are getting. That's all they're seeing. We don't know what happened in Congress today. We don't know where Biden is or what he's doing. We have no idea. Like, we don't know anything because all they're talking about is the former guy. So I'm also being told that that could start to shift, and it certainly will start to shift if more and more people reach out to news organizations and say, kind of enough. Enough is enough already with the helicopters following a car that's driving. It's not necessary. Um, so that's what it looks like to me. The only other thing that I want to sort of add in there is they're telling me that indeed there is a great deal of friction, if you will, between Ivanka and Jared and Daddy. He is incredibly angry with them. He is very betrayed feeling. He thinks that she has been unbelievably disloyal. And there is a lot of friction there. And what is so interesting is that we all know, we've always known, that his daughter is a chip off the old block. And so she has watched her father for all of her years throw people under the bus when he was done with them, when there was not any good that was going to come from holding on to them. And hello, it's not surprising your daughter did exactly the same thing. So there's that. That's going to be interesting to watch how that unfolds because definitely there is behavior there indicating that she has flipped. She has given information to various sources in a way of protecting herself and her family. I don't think that that's going to stop the investigation into that what $2 billion gift or loan or whatever it is that Jared got, but there's definitely that kind of energy where they have the Kushners have gone into a very, very protective mode, and it's self-protection. Okay, so this is what I know. I'm so grateful that you are hanging in there with me. Atlas has a thing or two. That you're hanging in there with me. And I thank you so much for your kind prayers and support. I'm going to, primarily I'm going to be looking at resting as much as I can over the next several days, but I will be popping in and out. So I hope to see you next time. Until then, take care, be well, and we'll see you really soon. Bye-bye.